Welcome convicts, please stay seated in your cells. Today we have another debate on the menu. Today is also February the 12th. Today is also the 482nd anniversary of the foundation of the capital of Chile. I'm going to spare you the embarrassment. The capital of Chile is Santiago. What's cool about Santiago is that it was founded by a Spanish conquistador named Pedro de Valdivia. The cool part is that he chose the name of the patron saint of Spain for the city, patron saint being Saint James. And at the time, using Latin, the name was Sanctu Jacobu. So from that, it was straightened out from Sanctu Jacobu to Santiago. Now, besides talking about nomenclature, today we have a different problem on our hands. I am on a complaining streak this weekend. Yesterday we complained about the responsibility of DPS mistakes in Mythic Plus. Today we have another complaint. Today we have a debate about what to do with these things right here. Because after the first applauses, after the first congratulations of Blizzard allowing us plebs to finally be able to trade Primal Chaos to our ALTS, we are left, of course, with the second part of the problem. The same thing we touched on when we made the video about Primal Chaos being tradable. The problem is that giving away Primal Chaos to ALTS wasn't really going to solve the issue, because what you also need on your ALTS is the concentrated or the Primal Focus to be able to craft your big item level pieces of gear. The only thing you gain by giving Primal Chaos to your ALTS is being able to craft the default base version of your Spark of Ingenuity item. So the 392 base item level piece, which, as we said last time, it's good for newly leveled characters. You know, you hit max level at 330 item level, and suddenly, thanks to being able to trade Primal Chaos from your main, you can suddenly have 5 different pieces of 392 item level gear on your alt. So that is good. That was still a good help for gearing up your characters. But what happens once you start getting into the 395 plus, 400 plus item level range? What happens once you start looking at Mythic Plus, once you start looking at higher item level pieces of gear? That's when you turn your eyes towards these two, in particular the concentrated Primal Focus and the amount of grind it will require for you to actually get your crafted items on your alt. Nowadays, we all have 5 Sparks of Ingenuity. Let's not count the extra sparks you might have looted ever since they made them, droppable in the open world and in the rest of the content of the game, just by looking at the quests. The rewards of 5 sparks. 5 sparks means completing 50 plus 16 keys. So 5 items to craft your piece of gear at 418 item level. So, 50 dungeons, 50 Mythic Plus keys at plus 16 is a lot of time to be spent on your alt characters. That's where we find our debate. That's where we find our divide. We have one faction, one side, which has been complaining, which has been saying the expansion is great, there is lots to do, I want to play my alts, but then I wake up in the morning, I log in, and I remind myself that if I want to play my alt somewhat competitively, I have to do 50 Mythic Plus 16s before I even get my hands on all of this crafted gear. And suddenly all of my conviction, all of my will to play my alt goes away and I log off. That's one side of the debate. The one that feels like not making the Primal Foci, the concentrated Primal Foci bind on account is wrong, is bad. It's just an unneeded barrier which is going to prevent more players to start dipping their toes on playing their alts more frequently. Then you have the other side of the debate. The other side of the debate, the other response to the request of having bind on account on basically everything for your crafted gear is that at the end of the day, when you talk about Mythic Plus, since this is the largest type of activity in terms of player base for PvE, when you talk about Mythic Plus, a lot of it has to do with rating, has to do with climbing the rating, with doing keys of a certain level, and then As you get more rating, you start getting invited into higher keys. Higher keys means more item level, and then you can continue and continue and continue, right? That's the normal climb everyone has to do, at the very least on their main character. What happens? What happens when you try to skip, when you try to take a shortcut to all of this on your alt? Because even though it is true what one side of the debate is saying, which is all of these things I earned myself, who cares to which character I give them? You know, my 90 concentrated Primal Foci were earned by me. Why can't I just choose who to give them to? Even though that part is true, what is also true is that Mythic Plus, for example, is a competitive environment, and you earned those rewards playing a certain character in a certain spec, in a certain role. So what you're trying to say is, because I earned so many items, so many materials for crafting on my Beast Mastery Hunter, I should be able to gear up much more and much more quickly my Blood Death Knight, so that my Blood Death Knight can jump from 400 item level to 415 item level overnight. The thing is, your 400 Blood Death Knight was stuck doing +8, +10 keys at the time, and now suddenly he finds himself at 415. So now your Blood Death Knight, your alt Blood Death Knight stuck doing +10s, suddenly has the item level to start queuing up for +20s. He did not have to do the grind, he did not have to learn his spec, learn the role into +12s and then 14s and then 16s, 18s. He did not have to do the whole grind, multiple depleted keys, attempting by trial and error, you know, failing multiple times, learning new things over time. No, he just bypasses all of that because of the sudden influx of very high item level crafted gear given to him by his main character. This side of the debate is saying that this is going to destabilize the nature, the community of Mythic Plus by essentially flooding the market, flooding the pool of possible applicant to your keys of tons of different alt characters who are effectively clueless about what they have to do at that level of key, who are there simply because they got a massive steroid of item level boost thanks to all of this crafted gear. They did not earn this gear, they did not earn this item level, they are simply queuing up to a much higher key level simply because they have the item level to do so, not because they proved they can be there. And that is the other side of the argument. Of course, there can be definitely different players with different mindsets. You know, the first side who just wants all of the stuff traded to their alts might be comprised of very good players who already know how to play their spec, how to play their alt characters. Maybe it was their main in Shadowlands, for example, and all they want to do is to be able to do +20 keys onwards. But they are currently stuck at 398 item level, and they know that before they get to start pushing +20s, they have to spend week after week of grinding dozens upon dozens upon dozens of keys at what they consider a very low key level, a very, not quite fun level of key, quite boring, quite much of a chore of a key level, which severely drags down their interest, their excitement towards playing that character. Of course, to those type of players, it would feel logical for them to want to be able to skip all of those middle of the pack average keys so that they can jump into the competitive type of key level they are already doing on their main character. But then you have the other side who is definitely not nearly as good, who is definitely not nearly as experienced, and would get a much larger item level bump, a much larger item level jump in power of their character without having proven, without actually knowing what to do with that gear. You might or might not have played, for example, in BFA, and remember what Titanforging caused to Mythic Plus. Titanforging caused many players who did not do high level keys in Mythic Plus to farm keys in the +10 range at, for example, 3 chesting the key. So Back then, 3-chesting the key also meant more loot at the end of the run. So more loot in a very easy key, plus the chance to Titanforge the item level up to the maximum possible, or even above the maximum possible, mythic rating quality item level gear from just a measly +10 key, plus even things like Titanforging world quests could give you top level gear. So you had all of these people doing +8s, +10s, eventually they would keep Titanforging enough stuff that they were able to start queuing up for things like +18 keys or +20 keys, even though all they did were +10, +11 or +12 keys. They have never even shown to be even remotely close to the level of players who clear +20 keys, but they could queue up for those because of the item level buffs they were gaining thanks to Titanforging. So the other side of the debate is basically using Titanforging as a comparison to what would be allowing your alt characters to get a whole bunch of 418 item level pieces of gear instantly. They would be able to jump several item levels, 10 to 15 item levels overnight, and suddenly skip a whole bunch of grind necessary for you to learn the spec, learn the role, learn the character, get used and accustomed to what you are supposed to play, what you are supposed to do on that character. Obviously, there is no solution that will keep both sides happy, and also there is no solution that will fix all the different types of players playing this game. As I mentioned at the start, there are no doubt players with alts who are already perfectly capable of clearing +20s, because even if their alt is a scuffed, terrible 397 item level Arcane Mage, they have played Arcane Mage before, they are perfectly able to play Arcane Mage, they just don't want to do the massive grind of Mythic Plus that would be required for them to go from +10 to +20. And then you also have the other side of players who are much less capable, much less knowledgeable about a particular spec that they are playing as an alt. Say, for example, a brain-dead 2-button Beast Mastery Hunter who suddenly wants to go and play Brewmaster Monk. This Beast Mastery Hunter has never even played tank in Mythic Plus, let alone playing tank at all, yet now with all of this item level boost on his Brewmaster, he would be able to just instantly queue up for 17 or 18 keys, while being more or less clueless about the spec, just because he was given a whole bunch of high item level crafted gear thanks to his main. So with this type of divide of the player base, it's obviously not quite possible to satisfy everyone. In my case, when it comes to this type of debate, I think I will be quite the Democrat and try to find somewhat of a middle ground, like, for example, making it faster to earn Primal Foci on your alts. So still not allow the bind on account trading, but for example, bump up the acquisition. From 1 per dungeon to 3 per dungeon, for example, would start making it much easier. Or maybe allow the bind on account, but make the transition a 3-to-1 exchange. So you can transform 3 Primal Foci of your main to 1 bind on account Foci to send to your alt. Either way, some type of system which still requires your character to play in Mythic Plus, your alt characters to get into the lower-ish levels of Mythic Plus to earn these Primal Foci. Not nearly as much of a grind as you had to do initially on your main character. I think that would be somewhat of a middle road. Not allow literally everyone and their mothers to get their scuffed alts, they have no idea how to play a whole bunch of top level gear, but at the same time make it somewhat faster. So all of the players who already know how to play their alts, already want to play their alts, but are currently cock-blocked by the amount of time, the time wall in front of them that they would have to spend trying to bring up their alt characters to the level they want to be able to play them and enjoy playing them, make it a little bit smaller. Make this wall a little bit smaller, make it a little bit easier to climb for that kind of player base. I think this would be a decent enough compromise. Personally, as I said, I am not too keen into allowing free trading of top level gear to alt characters, because I have seen before, from Legion to BFA, the dangers and the damages that things like Titanforging have done to Mythic Plus, to the Mythic Plus pug random community, allowing players to jump several layers of Mythic Plus keys just because they got Titanforged gear, made the Mythic Plus scene very unstable. You would be grouped, you would be pugging with players who had vastly different skill levels, as they would basically be lying about their skill level because of the gear they got wasn't actually at that level of content. It was earned at much lower down levels of content that happened to Titanforge. So being already damaged by this type of situation in previous expansions, I'm not too keen into allowing just the free flood of top level gear to literally everyone, but still I do also agree that the current way to be able to get this high item level gear from crafting requires too much grinding. It should still be somewhat reduced. The length of time it takes you to grind all of these primal foci before you can craft your 418 pieces of gear. That is my current take on this debate. So at the end of this video, you are guys free, of course, to leave down in the comments what would be your solution about this. If you are perfectly fine right now to have all of the alt characters do the full grind, just like the main set to do it, the full 50 dungeons at plus 16 required to get their 5 crafted pieces of gear. If you are in complete favor of the full-on bind on account transfer of those items, or if you are more around my level of somewhat of a middle way, a middle path between the two options, or maybe you have a completely different solution to this debate currently going on. But for today, on this Sunday, we are stopping here. We are leaving each other, and of course we start as usual by thanking all of my Patreon supporters for the contribution and the help to the growth of this channel. Help which can be given still without having to spend money. Liking and commenting down below on this video, as well as subscribing to the channel itself, are still worthy enough ways to show your support. At least that's what the YouTube algorithm demands. Also, other ways to support include following me on Twitter, going to follow me as well on my Twitch stream, which one day I have been told will go back live soon enough. So with this out of the way, thank you guys again for watching. See you guys soon, and in the meantime, damn, I've talked for too much. Back-to-back videos and the throat is now starting to sting a little bit. I need to take a break.